All right, Molly, I got your question about the height function that you were working on. You have your y and your x defined out here, and you're getting an error. Actually, I'm going to step through and get the error so we can look at it together here. So we have, we're setting y equal to 1 and x equal to 0. So notice this says these are global variables. That's going to be really important in a second here. So I'm going to go forward here and go, now we're going to, so we've defined height, we've defined y, we've defined x, we've defined this function, height 86, which is a function, and this even p function. So we have these two pointers going to these functions, and we have these values. 1 is stored in y and 0 is stored in x. Okay, and just to talk a little bit about the computerish parts here of what's going on, this basically what happens is the integer values have a particular amount of storage space that they take. So every single integer takes the same amount of storage space. So we can just load in a number 1 at a particular address in memory, or load in a 0. But things like functions, we don't really know at compile time how much space the function is going to take up, because different functions are different lengths. So what we do is we, instead of trying to store the whole function, we store an address that points to the function. So there's an address. So that's why there's this pointer business here, because really what's being stored here is an address that tells you where that function is in memory. And the same deal over here. All right, so let's get back to this then. So we have defined these global variables x and y, these two integers, and we have defined these functions, these global functions. So let's go in here, and now we go to height 86, and we have n is defined. Okay, so in the scope of this function right here, n is defined. But then when we go down and try to print y, we see it says unbound local error, local variable y referenced before assignment. So you got some version of that error, probably in idle. So what's going on here? Well, the variable y is defined out here, but it hasn't been defined inside this function. So the way to do that is, there's a couple of ways to do that. So one thing you can do is you can actually just, right here, you can say, oops, global y, oops, global x, right? And what that does is that says whatever global y variables are floating around out there inside this function definition, that's the y that I'm going to use. And the same thing with the x. So we could do that. And notice this says stopped after 300 steps to prevent possible infinite loops. So there's some other stuff going on that we need to look at, but let's just see that fixed the global variables problem. So now we have defined our variables in our function, and now when we go in here and say print y, now it knows what y is, so it went ahead and printed it. Okay. Like I said, there's some other stuff going on here that we're going to have to take a look at. I'm going to just give you a preview here. So now we go in and we say height 86 with 3 times n plus 1. And we're going in and we do even p again. We return a value there. Notice that we're not returning any values out of height 86. So n kind of keeps going between these 1, 4, and 2, it looks like. So we'll get to that in a minute. There's one other thing, though, I want to mention, because this is really not the way that you is really not considered the best way to handle this problem. What programmers usually do is move the local variables down to here. The reason they do that is it's better to keep things local if you can. Now, again, this may or may not work for you depending on what you're trying to do with this height 86. But I'm going to save that for the next video.